So when we're looking at life in the soil, and we start trying to understand what the benefits are of what this biology does for you in the soil, I like to show this picture because a lot of people who grow grass can't believe that root systems of grass grow this deep. This is a 3-month-old grass plant. And because the soil had the biology, because the organisms were there building the structure, protecting that root system from disease-causing organisms, cycling nutrients, and keeping that plant healthy, that plant has put its root system down 4.5 feet in a 3-month period. Imagine how deep these roots are going to go by the time this plant gets to be 10 or 15 or 20 or 100 years old. How far down can roots go? And it's based on the plant that you're growing. You have to know something about your plant. When we're looking at ryegrass in somebody's lawn, how far down can the root systems of ryegrass go? Easily 15 feet. So if you go home and you look at the grass in your pasture, and if it's not down at 15 feet, what's the take-home message? Mother Nature's trying to tell you, you're trying to grow plants on dirt, and you are not going to be successful. We need to get this biology back in the soil. This is work that I did with Hendrika Schraven, who's a landscape architect up in Seattle, Washington. And this is Hendrika's holding that plant. We grew grass in a sward area with really good biology down into the soil. We punched a PVC pipe down into the soil, pulled the plant, roots and all, up out of the soil, cut the PVC pipe open, washed that root system with a little bit of water from the hose, and took the picture. Hendrika Schraven is a 6.5-foot tall person. That root system is 4.5 feet, and that's only 3 months old. So we need to get this biology to build structure, to get that root system to grow as deep as it possibly can. If the roots of your plants are down even at 4.5 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, do you have to worry about drought in the summertime? Nah. We're going to get all the water that we need moving into that soil, infiltrating and being held in that soil, because that plant is putting out exudate. The plant puts out the foods to feed the organisms. Every single plant releases exudates from its root system. What's an exudate? Isn't this like the secret society of scientists? What do you mean when you say exudate? Yes, we have our own language, and we don't want you to know what we're talking about, because don't we sound smart when we use the foreign language? So what's an exudate? Well, if you take the meaning of that word, it's something that's exuding from the body. Oh yeah, sweat. That's an exudate. So when we're releasing these things, what exactly is the chemical composition of an exudate coming out of the root system? And guess what? It's coming out of the top part of the plant too. Every leaf, all of the bark, when we're looking at flowers, when we're looking at fruit, they're all releasing exudates to grow the proper set of microorganisms on the surface of the plant, to protect the plant from disease, to cycle nutrients, to build structure in that soil. So exudates. Exudates are comprised mostly of simple sugars, a little bit of protein, and a little bit of carbohydrate. So when I ask you to go into your kitchen and make me a recipe of that material, what's simple sugar in your kitchen? White sugar, brown sugar, honey, molasses, all those wonderful sugary things. So take a bowl, and you're going to put a bunch of sugar in there, maybe a little bit of all of those different kinds. And now I'm going to go get some protein. What's protein in your kitchen? Eggs, maybe some cheese, milk. So let's put that in there. Okay, carbohydrate. What's carbohydrate in your kitchen? Flour. So now I've got mostly sugar, a little bit of protein, a little bit of carbohydrate. What is this a recipe for? Cakes and cookies. Your plant is releasing cakes and cookies out into the soil in order to grow these bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, and we need to understand what these organisms do for your plant, and that's where I'm planning on going today. Notice the fact that we cut this plant a couple times during the year. So about 3 days before we punched the hole and pulled this root system up, we cut this plant to 1/2 inch. Now, if it's true that when you cut the top part of the plant to 1/2 inch, it causes the root system to slough off to 1/2 inch. If that's true, then this root system regrew in 3 days, 4.5 feet. I don't think so, do you? This plant did not lose any of its root system. When it was artificially grazed, otherwise known as mowing, it did not cause any loss of that root system. If this plant's healthy, it does not lose any of the root system. That's stored carbon. It does not have to be replaced. It is not a metabolic drain on your plant. So when your animals graze your plants and your plants are healthy, you're not losing any of the root system. In fact, what happens, and there's a couple papers in the scientific literature that show this from back in 1984, 1986, 1989, that show that when you graze the above ground part of a plant, it causes a massive flush of exudates out of the root system. And so if you're putting a massive amount of sugar, proteins, cakes and cookies into the soil, the bacteria and fungi are going to respond and start growing very, very rapidly. The bacteria and fungi are the organisms that make the enzymes to pull nutrients out of your sand, out of your silts, out of your clays, out of your organic matter, out of the rocks and out of the pebbles, and store those nutrients in the bacterial and fungal biomass. There is not going to be any leaching. You are not going to lose any of those nutrients because they are not soluble. They are not plant available. So how do we get those nutrients that the plant has directed the bacteria and fungi to go out, make those enzymes, pull those nutrients into their bodies? How do we get those nutrients available back to the plant? Well, that's where we have to have the predators of the bacteria and fungi. And who are the predators of the bacteria and fungi? Well, bacteria are eaten by protozoa. Hopefully in an aerobic system, it's going to be the flagellates and the amoebae. It's going to be the bacterial-feeding nematodes. Bacterial-feeding nematodes, what do they eat? Bacteria, yes. So the things that eat bacteria, what eats fungi in soil? Well, it's going to be the fungal-feeding nematodes and the fungal-feeding microarthropods. Earthworms eat both bacteria and fungi. They're pretty nonspecific. So anytime the bacteria and fungi are eaten by any one of their predators, the nutrients that have been tied up at extremely high concentrations in the bacterial and fungal biomass are going to be released into the soil right at the surface of your root. So when that plant is grazed, flush of exudates, millions and billions of bacteria, miles and miles or kilometers and kilometers of fungal hyphae going to be grown, pulling nutrients into their bodies. Here come the bacteria feeders, the protozoa, the nematodes, the microarthropods, the fungal feeders. They're going to eat the bacteria and fungi and release right to that root system precisely the nutrients in all of the balance, in the proper balance for your plant. And so at precisely the moment that that plant is beginning to regrow the above ground biomass, photosynthesizing, your plant's making all the sugar it needs. But where's it going to get the nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, magnesium, calcium, sodium, potassium, iron, zinc, borate, the whole mix? How many nutrients do plants require? All of them. I love the fact that, when I was a little kid, how many essential nutrients did we think about? Well, how old am I? Well, 63 years ago. How many essential nutrients? 3. NPK. Right, like that's going to grow a plant. That's going to grow you. Excuse me. So by the time I got to high school, how many essential nutrients? It was up to 8. By the time I was in college, how many essential nutrients? It was up to 12. Today, how many essential nutrients? Most plant physiologists will agree, most, notice I said most, because in the world of science, do we agree on stuff? So most plant physiologists will say, how many essential nutrients? You don't know? Do you guys grow plants for a living? Okay, because we argue about it all the time. Well, it's the answer to the universe. Remember The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? What's the answer to the universe? 42. There are 42 essential nutrients. and you better balance them all correctly. You put an inorganic fertilizer out, you put rock dust out, are you going to be balancing the nutrients for your plant in a plant available form? You put nitrate fertilizer out, have you not messed up the physiology of your plant? Because you forced just one nutrient in extremely high concentrations. Can't be doing that. Your plant needs balance. And so when those bacteria and fungi are eaten by the protozoa, nematodes, microarthropods, earthworms, and such, balance of all of the nutrients. Your plant takes it up and starts to regrow using the sugars to form the structures, to form the protein, the carbohydrates, all of the lipopolysaccharides, all the essential metabolites that that plant has to have. Your plant doesn't slough the root system. If it sloughs its root system, how is it going to get the nutrients that it needs? How is it going to get the water that it needs? So there's no loss of nutrients. But what if you come in and you graze that plant and you allow those animals to come back before the sugars and the proteins and the carbohydrates get replaced and stored again in that root system? You're stressing the plant. It's a little bit of trouble because when you come in and graze again, it forces a big pulse of nutrients, the exudates, out into the soil. And so the bacteria and fungi grow, the protozoa and nematodes, and they're releasing the nutrients back to your plant. Your plant starts to regrow. What if you come in and graze too soon? Now you're really stressing your plant. How many times can you come back and eat that grass too soon before the nutrients are restored, replenished in that root system to the point where if you do this often enough, yes, then your root system is going to slough. And if you slough your nutrient gathering capacity, if you slough off the mechanism by which you obtain water out of the deeper regions of the soil, especially in a dry summer period, what's going to happen to your plant? Okay, it dies. So there's a message from Mother Nature. If your root system looks like this, is there a root system on here? This is out of a golf course green that has been hammered excessively. And look at the root system of that grass. Yes, it is cut to 1/8 of an inch every day, and the root system goes down to there, 1/8 of an inch deep. And so you see where grass people dealing with turf, they say, well, because we cut the top of the plant to 1/8 of an inch, the root system only goes down 1/8 of an inch. Right. Look at whatever the other information is in this soil. What's causing that black, dark color? When you take that coring tool and you punch a hole in that turf and you pull this core up, what's the smell? Woohoo! Yeah. Oh boy, does that smell bad. It's a mixture of ammonia, a little hydrogen sulfide, rotten egg smell, a little vomit, a little putrescine, a little acetic acid, and a little sour milk smell. What does that smell like? Yeah, oh, yummy. Yeah, and what is that telling you? This soil went anaerobic. This black, dark layer is the residues that are left behind when we lose our nitrogen as a gas, when we lose our sulfur as a gas, when we lose our phosphate as a gas. And so if we allow this soil to go anaerobic, we're losing the nutrients that would otherwise be available for our plant to be able to regrow. As we go anaerobic, all kinds of other bad things are produced, and I want to very quickly go through that. How do we rebuild the structure in that soil? And what happens to your root system as we rebuild the structure in that soil? So yes, a very stressed plant because the root system is only going down 1/8 of an inch. There's a really horrific thatch layer. We've got to chew up, we've got to decompose that thatch layer so the anaerobic disease-causing fungi, the root-feeding pests, are not going to find this a happy habitat anymore. Right now, this is one sick, unhealthy, unhappy plant. So what we do is we come along and we apply the proper sets of organisms in a compost tea when we're dealing with turf because they don't like compost, they don't like the organic matter sitting on the surface of the soil. So between this picture and the next one I'm going to show you, we have applied compost tea where we have extracted the organisms using water, aerobic conditions, put a little bit of additional foods in to really push fungal growth. And after a 24-hour tea brew, we apply that tea. And we have done that 3 times. Can you notice what's happened to the anaerobic compounds present in the soil? They've disappeared. The bacteria, the fungi, have eaten those materials, put it back into the structure of their bodies in the organic matter. And the root system on this turf, there's our turf. We're still cutting it in 1/8 of an inch every day. How far down are the root systems? This is the bottom of the root system. So in approximately a month, that root system has grown down a good 4.5 inches. Do not tell me that because we cut the top of the plant, it's going to cause the roots to slough off. Because we are growing roots. Today, the roots in this golf course are down at about 8 feet. And they're still mowing it every day to 1/8 of an inch through the growing season. Not going to lose roots. So we need to understand this whole system below ground. We need to understand what happens when you compact your soil. And think of all the different things we do out in our agricultural systems, even in our turf systems, in orchards. Think of the things that we do constantly to compact that soil. Every time we drive big equipment up and down and over our soils, we're compacting at depth. And when you drive a pickup truck over your soil, where do you compact your soil? It's not at the surface. Plant physics tells us that the compaction layer is going to form at depth based on the weight of the equipment and the width of the tire. So your typical common everyday pickup truck is going to cause compaction at about 18 inches. Why do we think root systems of our plants don't go more than 18 inches? Well, where's your compaction? So start looking for where that compaction layer is. Here's an example, scientific literature, showing that in a well-drained soil, that root system is going to go all the way down until it hits the compaction layer. Waterlogged soil causes mottling. When we're looking at the water-filled pores, the 100% moisture in that soil, that's going to cut those roots off at that depth. What if our water table, our anaerobic layer is up a little bit higher? Well, okay, look at what's happening to your plant. Basically, it's going to kill the plant. So what's actually happening under anaerobic conditions when we waterlog the soil, when we impose compaction? In this was too good a picture to pass up. This neighbor wanted to build a barbecue pit. So they dug down into the soil and look at that profile. Why is it that the roots of that tree or the grass or that shrub, why aren't they going down deeper into that soil? Tree roots can push their way through concrete. They will break up dams. How can these roots not be going down through that compaction layer? Because there's something else involved. When we compact soil, water moving down into the soil is going to not be able to move from soil of one density into soil of a different density. And so there's our compaction. Water cannot move through. So water hangs up right here. Oxygen cannot move through water very rapidly at all. And so see that black, dark anaerobic layer? And that's why that root system cannot grow any deeper than that. And so we think it's normal. In the world of arboriculture, in the world of agriculture, we think that because we see over and over and over again, we see roots going down just a little ways and then going sideways, we think that's normal. No, no, no. This is an artifact of the damage that we as human beings do to our soils. When you apply an inorganic fertilizer, it's a salt. You are going to be killing these organisms. When you use a pesticide, anytime a pesticide is used, it's going to kill way more than the target organism. So we can't be doing those things. We've got solid science to tell you why your clients, talking with them, getting them to convert from a conventional system, how we can, what the problem is and how they need to move along.